Tuned with near-death experiencer Bill Letson.
Hi, everyone. This is Bill Letson, and I'm talking to you from California. And I'm a near-death experiencer. I've been telling my story now for about the last 8 years, and things got really busy the last year and a half. A lot of these podcasts are out there and out there, and it's a really cool thing to watch. The interesting thing from my perspective is I've asked every one of these podcasters, how did they get started on this? How did they get started, with this near-death experience thing? Why the interest? Where'd it come from? Is somebody organizing all you guys? And the answer is always, it's always the same. It's like, I am drawn to do this. It's helpful for humanity. It's something that's deep in my soul. And, that's from my perspective, that's an interesting thing because these videos are getting millions of views and hundreds of people worldwide are, starting up these podcasts. And, this is a divine hand in the material world. There's a divine hand that's orchestrating our experience here. And so I've been telling my story. It's, dozens and dozens of times. And the reason I started telling it is because how much good it can do, how much it can help people with their questions. And the big question is, what's the universe about? And a couple of researchers that I read early on, they were all saying the same thing. They were saying, if you want to understand the universe, ask the near-death experiencer, ask the person who gets involved in the shamanic healing, the shamanic ceremonies, or ask those people who can go into deep meditation, trance-like state where their body feels like a pile of rocks and they sort of move from it into this blissful other realm. And that is, they're all saying, they're all talking about the same thing. And what they're talking about is that we are these amazing beings. Even though we are this earthly avatar, this earthly vessel, having this experience, and we know that we grow old and we die someday, and but we never die because there's us, this human form, and then there's this soul above that, and then you go into this higher self, and you get into this, your personality, your consciousness really has no limits, and we're just playing a game here. So I'll tell my near-death experience, and I'll also talk a little bit about that shamanic medicine stuff. And I guess my big point these days is that everybody You don't need a near-death experience. There's nothing special about any of us. You definitely don't need to go drink ayahuasca in the jungle. That can be a terrorizing thing. But if you can quiet yourself, and I know these times are not very quiet, where everyone's staring at screens and everyone's going a mile a minute. There's so much information. But if you can quiet yourself and get still in nature, you can reach the same places. You can experience the same things. You can experience this highly expanded, infinite, eternal you that we all are. And, through this getting quiet and meditative state, all I ever do is sit still. And the only thing I've ever said is let go, let go of, this earthly perspective and go inward. And then it just expands into the infinite. And that's what we all are. And so I'll tell my near-death experience story again, and I hope it can start some conversation about what we all are, what all of you are, and we can get some healing in the world. Okay. So in 1994, I was working as a fireman in Santa Barbara for Santa Barbara County. I was at a station 11 down in Goleta, and I was a driver on a paramedic engine. We had 4 of us, and it was a flu season. It wasn't a pandemic or anything like that. It was just a rough flu season. And, that's what we had every 3 or 4 years. We'd have a powerful flu come through, and it would overrun the hospitals and the emergency rooms. And we were in the middle of one of those, and we were running calls. And we went to this one lady, and she was really ill. And she exhaled, and I took a breath in, and I got what she got. And I was super sick a couple days later, and I needed to go to the hospital. I was dehydrated, and my vital signs were failing. And I got, 911. We called 911, and I got in an ambulance, and they started IVs, and they got me to the hospital. And, the place was filled with people that were sick with the same flu. And I got, some missteps happened. And I came in there on my knees with my vital signs, and what I was given just floored me. And I was out cold around 3:30 in the afternoon. And I was put in intensive care and hope for the best. And overnight, I left my body. I was no longer Bill. I was this huge expanded balloon, this huge expanded cloud. It seemed like I went on forever. It felt like I had been released from a hot, stuffy closet, and I was now back to who I really was. And it felt like I was flying through this cool breeze. It was blowing through every atom of my existence, and somebody was pouring honey all over my brain, and it was running down through all my nerves. And I was in this constant state of euphoria. It was just an ecstatic feeling. I didn't know a person could feel like that. And I've called it a cosmic orgasm, because that is the only thing that that even comes close to that feeling. And it wasn't, just this event. That was a standard hustle. That was your vibration. That was your, how you felt all the time. And I was flying along saying, this is unbelievable. And the question that just came through my head, it was just so baffling. I was like, how in the world did I forget who I really was? How is it possible that I believed I was this human dude? And he had this whole story, and he had this chatter running in his head that drives us all crazy. And I had these likes and I had dislikes and I had a history and all this stuff. And as I flew along, it was that was just a continuous thought was, how is it? Well, it was just like an amazing trick, and that's what we do to ourselves. We forget who we really are. We come down into this world of really heavy emotions, and we go through these challenges, and we script it all out. And when we leave, there's no loss. There's never any lasting harm that's done here. There are no sins. We're just here to learn. So I was flying along, and I was around all of these giant stars. That's all I could call them for years. There's these huge balls, and they had all these colors and light and emotions coming from them. And it was like I was being paraded through them. And I was absolutely stoked to be home. And any emotions, like I was talking about, these dark emotions that are here on the earth plane, none of those existed. And it was like, it's like a pinch, and your brother and sisters hold you down and your kid, and they hold and they pinch you really hard. And it was like the pinch had been released. And it was just this, it was gone. The pain was gone. It evaporated. And when I talk about pain, I'm talking about those low frequency vibrations, those low frequency emotions. That is what the universe is about. Emotions are choices in feelings, how we feel about things. What emotion do we project about others? And so everything that was like anger and resentment and jealousy, rage, all those things were gone. They did not exist. They do not exist where we come from. They only exist here. And if you're having problems with depression or things like that, have no fear. We're just having a game here. It's like going through the spook house, and we're getting a feel for the exact opposite that doesn't exist in the universe. It only exists here in this school where we learn about our emotions and our feelings and our choices. So I'm flying along and I'm seeing all this, there's talk about the Akashic records and how all the information in the universe is available to anybody. And I was just seeing these pages like fly past me, like with formulas and geometry and equations. And any question that you had was instantly answered. It's a true thing. The Akashic records is a true thing. Everything that ever happened, everything that's ever known is, written on the fabric of the universe, and everybody can access it once we leave our bodies, either through meditation or some of the other ways. Near-death experience, but you don't want to try that. So I'm flying along and everything is awesome. And I'm like, man, this is cool. I am permanently stoked. And a friend of mine, when she was telling her story, she was like, as she flew along, she was like, oh, cool. Oh, that's so cool. You're in this continuous state of being stoked, being euphoric about being alive, eternally alive. And another thing is, I was still me. I was, that voice in your head that narrates your day, tells you what you think about things. That person that we all talk to ourselves, that guy was still absolutely seamlessly, flawlessly still me, but I just wasn't a human being anymore. And I knew I had been tricked into believing it. And, you know, I've come to learn, we set the whole thing up. We send ourselves down here to go through these challenges and to grow, to make higher vibrational choices when the chips are down, when you're gonna lose, and but you still choose to be kind and to be loving and to take a back seat. You know, you don't have to win. You don't have to get the last word. You don't have to react to this place at all. Just be kind, and your vibration raises. And we do that often enough in our lives, and we grow. It's our soul grows. Our soul grows in the capacity to love. It's pretty cool stuff. And if you watch the movie Groundhog Day, that's exactly what Bill Murray goes through. He's, you know, kind of an a-hole there at the beginning of the movie, and then he gets stuck in this place, and he keeps living the same day over and over. That's us coming to Earth, and we live many, many lives over and over. And he makes the same selfish mistakes, and he gets frustrated, and he starts thinking about suicide. He wants out of this game. And then he gives up on the self. He gives up on the selfishness, and he starts being kind. He takes care of a homeless guy and a little kid that falls out of a tree every day. And he's got this big, long list of helping these little old ladies out. And he's, you know, Bill's selfish needs evaporate, and he's out to serve others, to help others. And that is what we're here to learn. And you hardly ever are going to see that in the media, but especially now in these times. We'll talk about these times because it's the most challenging times right now. They're getting better though. The universe, the Earth is waking up to what it really is, and these lights are coming on. This is why these big changes, interest in NDEs, and that's going to spread and spread. And so anyway, back to me. I was flying along through this incredible sea of stars, this star-filled realm. All of a sudden, I landed. I was in a different place. I was in, it was more contracted down. It was a solid place. It had indirect lighting. There were tables and chairs there, and equipment. It was like a facility or some kind of clinic or something like that. And there were beings there. Right in front of me, there were these three short little hooded guys, and they had these dark robes. They were about 4 feet tall, and they were right in front of me. They were smiling from ear to ear, and they were giggling and bouncing around like little munchkins. And they were saying things like, "How was it? What did you learn? What can you tell us?" And I just kept looking at him. I was sort of amazed, disoriented. Like all of a sudden I'm in this place, like I was in a completely different dimension. And, you know, that's what we are, these multidimensional beings, these conscious thought forms. That's what we really are. So I went from Earth to this heavenly realm, and then suddenly I was in this in-between place, this maybe astral realm. But they kept asking me questions, and they were bouncing around and giggling, and it felt like I had, they were my best friends, and I had just rode the roller coaster, the new roller coaster in town, and I'd gotten off the roller coaster back at the landing, and they were asking me all these questions, like, you know, how was it? And So one of them came forward, and they could tell I was struggling, and one of them came forward and he looked me up and down, and then he turned to the other two and he said, "He doesn't remember us." And they all started giggling uproariously. They thought that was hilarious. And I was kind of like, "Well, guys, I'm doing my best here. This is very strange for me. I was suddenly, in this place." And they thought that was hysterical. And then there was this other guy, and he had been in the background, and he came forward, and he was this tall, wispy guy. And it was like this spinning energy is very thin, like a trimmed up Gumby. And I've called him lots of things, like a walking stick insect, or like a Gumby, but he was like this spinning whirlpool with this wispy stuff coming off of him, energetic being. And he had the biggest, broadest smile on his face. He was overjoyed to see me, and big bright eyes. And when he came forward, it was like I was looking at somebody underwater. He had this parts of him would separate as he moved, and then the rest, and then it would catch up. And absolutely like it was an underwater vision of a spinning, whirlpool or something. And I had a medium explain that to me recently, that, we are these infinite beings that are everywhere. And when you decide to show up somewhere, you show up as a sliver of spinning energy. And that made perfect sense. But he came forward, and as he got close to me, I had this feeling of my chest was just like over pumping. My heart area was just expanding, like it was going to explode. And I had a, frog in my throat. It was clenched down, like I was watching a tearjerker movie where, the dog finds his way back to his master, and you just, you're in the theater and you're just going to start crying. And that's what it felt like when he came close to me. I felt like I was going to drop to my knees and break down in uncontrollable crying from love. There was so much love coming from this being that it was overwhelming. It was paralyzing. So he came forward, and he had everything I did or said. He was just chuckling, and he had this sweetest laugh. And every time he chuckled, I could feel his chuckle inside of me. It was very strange. And there wasn't much going on. It wasn't very organized. There didn't seem to be a plan. The three little hooded guys were bouncing around, and they were giggling and clowning around, high-fiving each other. And they looked exactly like and behaved exactly like those beings in the movie Communion, where Christopher Walken is supposedly in this spaceship, and he's with these aliens, and they're doing things to him. And after a while, he realizes that he gets rid of his fear, and he realizes that they are never doing anything harmful to him. And, that movie's supposed to be a horror movie, but when I watch it, I see exactly what I went through. And, there's a tall, wispier guy in the background the whole time. And, those guys are doing the same thing. They're bouncing around, high-fiving him. They're making these funny gestures, and they're sweethearts. They're, guides, helpers, angels, whatever we want to call them. It's kind of, I could tell that they were looking out for me, and that they were in some kind of a service mode for my soul's journey. So what wasn't really organized. Nothing was going on. And he, at one point, I said, well, I'm not going back there, meaning Earth, Bill. I'm not going back into that tube. My body to me was like a banana peel. It was about as worthless as a banana peel. And what you do with a banana peel is you throw it away or you compost it or something. It was of no concern to me, and neither was Bill. And so I was saying, I'm not going back there. There's no way that's ever going to happen. So what do you guys, I understand there's some kind of life review or something, and you guys want to get started with that, because I wanted to move on. Eventually I'd move clear out of that facility. And I'd already seen that there is this limitless heavenly realm where there's all possibilities are available to us. And I wanted to get on with that. And so I said, you guys want to get started with that life review? And the big guy, the tall, wispy guy, he just cracked up. He thought that was the funniest thing. And he said, sure, let's do that. How do you want to start? And, I realized later that he was just humoring me. And I was like a toddler, a young soul that was trying to take over, and like a little 3-year-old. And he was, he loved me. He's a good dad. And it's just like, okay, yeah, go ahead. You figure it out. And so I said, all right, let's just go with this. So I started telling stories about my life. I didn't have any big regrets at all. I just, my wife wanted us to take this job on an island when we first got out of college, and it was going to be a park service way off the coast. Nobody was going to be on the island except us, and we were supposed to do some stuff with wildlife and give a tour every week or so. And she wanted that she said, when are we going to get an opportunity to live on an island by ourselves? But I didn't take that job. I took a fire job because I still wanted to be with the guys, and I wanted the excitement of being a fireman. But I, regret. Sometimes I regret that I didn't give her what she deserved, because she would have loved it. It would have been perfect for her. I would have been a little bored, but now that I'm almost 70, it's like, I wish I'd done that for her. So I'm talking away and telling these different parts of my life that don't mean anything. And then the tall, wispy guy steps forward and he goes, okay, that's enough. Time to go back. And I was like, go back? That just shocked me. I was like, dude, I am not going back there. Meaning here, Bill. There's no way I'm going back there. You can't send me back there. You don't understand. It's really a terrible place. And he said, no, you're going back. And, I had some things, that I told him. I think I was 38 at the time. I said, I'm almost 40. That's not much left in my life. I'm an old timer. And he thought that was funny. And I told him, I got lots of friends and everything, and they're all cool and I love them. But the only people that are really going to be upset is my wife and my parents. And they're strong people. They will get over it. And he thought that was really funny. And he's like, no, man, you're going back. And he came forward, and I felt the place just breaking up. It was like I was being beamed out of there. It was just sort of disassociating, coming apart. I felt the frequency dropping, and he just sort of evaporated in front of me. And I dropped away in frequency to a lower vibration. I dropped away into darkness. And before I was back in my body, I remembered being in this place near my body. And I remember it was lonely and it was dismal and it was scary and it was a place that you didn't want to be. And I don't know if that was because it is this, the other place, the things we call hell and or things like that are right close to this dimension, this physical world dimension. Some people say that we are in hell and we are supposed to, by the virtue of raising our own vibration, we are supposed to navigate back into those higher realms. We earn our wings by our vibration, our higher emotions, which makes perfect sense. And I don't know if it was that because it was that place, or if it was because I was being reabsorbed into the energy of Bill and all that heavy side that we carry. It is a lot of you are suffering in these days, and just know that it is a tremendous weight that we carry, emotional weight in these times, and that it's not forever. And don't hasten the end of your life. Live your life and meet the challenges that you came for, but just know that it's a ride, it's a game. Everything's cool. So I was back inside of Bill, and some hours later I started waking up. The automatic blood pressure machine would squeeze my arm, and I'd wake up and I'd look at it and I'd see the numbers were not very good. But as the cycles kept coming on, I kept waking up and I could see the numbers lit up in the dark, and my vital signs were climbing. And at some point early in the morning, 4 or 5, something like that, I could stay awake. And I had recovered to the point where I could stay conscious. And a nurse walked by. She was doing her rounds in intensive care. And she looked at me, and I'm looking around, and she's like, "Whoa, you're awake." And she was shocked. And I'm like, "Yes, I am awake." And she said, "I have to go tell the doctor. We didn't know what was going on with you. We didn't know if you were going to, survive the night. You've been our special project." And I said, "Okay, you can go get the doctor, and that's fine. But first, what am I doing back here?" I had to complain to somebody. I was pissed, and I told her I was home. I was home with my best friends, with everything I've ever wanted, and now I'm back here. How did I get back here? I had died. I had bought the farm, and I said I was convinced of it. And she was this old gum-chewing nurse, and she had her hands on my shoulders by then. And she said, "Honey, you've been in escrow, but you fell out of escrow, and now you're back with us, and you're going to have to get your head around that." And that was one of the best things that can happen to an NDEer, because it stopped that cycle of why did this happen to me? Why am I back here? What did I do wrong that I'm shoved back into this place? And her words echoed in my head for years. And it's like, okay, this is a situation. I was obviously sent back. I had the conversation, don't send me, but it is to be. It is a life that we planned, and it's precious. And all of our choices here, are followed by thousands of souls, always watching us. And just to capitalize on that a little bit, that movie, The Truman Show, where Jim Carrey's in that town and everyone's watching him on TVs, and he's making these choices, and the town is conspiring for him to have all these experiences, and everyone's hanging on what are his choices? Is he going to choose higher vibrational stuff? Is he going to be brave and kind, or is he going to, do something low vibrational? And, in the end, he conquers his fear of water, and he disassociates with fear. That's what we're supposed to do. Low vibrational emotions. And then he leaves the town. So back to me, my family came in, and the doctors came by, and I'm just like, blah, 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 blah. I saw these 3 guys, and they were so cool, and you guys got to hear this, and this is so important. And I could see the disappointment in my parents' face, and my wife somewhat. And the doctor said, "You're just crazy, you had a dream or whatever." That none of that happened, and I knew it did. It's as clear today as it was 30 years ago. Details down to the faces and everything. So that's kind of how it went. I was released there that day or the next day. I got released from the hospital. I was a few days on the couch and got recovered and went back to work. And everybody wanted to know what happened. I heard you had a close call, and we heard something else happened. And I told everybody. I had no shame. I told everybody, this thing, we don't really die. We are in this sort of role that we're playing. And we continue after the role ends. The avatar dies. We don't die. And it's a seamless, effortless, painless upgrade. Tremendous upgrade. And we still exist. And we go on. So, I told the story for a few weeks around the department, and it got up to the upper ranks office and stuff, and one of the guys came by and said, "Hey, they're talking about you up there in the office." And as a fireman, so can't have kooks on the fire department. So I got it, and I zipped it, and I dummied up for 15 years. I didn't talk about it a couple of times. A couple of guys told me, late at night on this fire line, you told me this story. And I'm like, yeah, well, it was absolutely true to me. And I didn't ever disrespect it. If somebody wanted to know, I told them, but I didn't broadcast it around. And in 2010, I retired, and I was a happy retiree. Something happened with the NDE to where when I came back in 94, I was doing this counting stuff. It was really funny how numbers were grouping together. I was counting, our universe is mathematics. That's what keeps it all together. That's what holds the production together, the play, the movie. And fundamentally, math is everything, numerology. But I didn't know any of that. I just knew that I was counting. When I was running, I was counting, and it was in groups of 4, and I was counting in to where things added up and they fit, and that was music. 4 beats to a bar, 4 bars to a measure. I don't know exactly what it was, but those things, math is music. And for me, as the years clicked away after going home, music was second nature. It was easy. So I bought some drums, and I could, after a few months, I could play any song. And after being around musicians, I could play any. Even if a guy wrote a song, he would say, "Hey, I wrote this song last night, and I'll try to get a recording of it." And I would just say, "Oh, just go for it." And he'd start playing it, and I knew right where the tempo changes were, when the verses were coming, where a fill belonged. It was all very structured, and we all know what good music sounds like. And You just knew how it all fit, like balancing a chemistry equation. It was the same thing. So yeah, I went on. I played drums and went in, played at a very, very high level, and kind of the whole thing was kind of strange. But so I was playing drums after I retired in a few bands, and I was bicycling and swimming and running trails with my dogs, and I was a happy retiree. But then that whole processing, that NDE and that experience came rushing forward. And I ended up with Rick Strassman's book, DMT, The Spirit Molecule. And when you get into chapters 13 and 14 called Contact Through the Veil, he was injecting his volunteers with DMT. We make DMT in our pineal gland, in our third eye, and it helps us dream and soul travel at night, REM sleep. That's when we're out of our bodies. And at the time of our death, the DMT, the pineal gland splashes the brain with a big dose, a massive dose of DMT, and it rockets our consciousness, our soul, out of the body, and we leave the body for good. And that's the whole thing with the NDE. Something, you got close to death, and something kicked off that automatic trigger where you got, your brain got splashed with DMT, and you're out of here. You've gone to another dimension, of mentalism. It's all thought. And the physical stage, you leave the stage behind. You just drop the avatar and you're out of here. And so, I read his book, and then I started, in the coming years, I started traveling to Costa Rica. I really didn't know why, but ended up in these villages that were way off the grid, around shaman and around just people that lived very close to the earth, and spent a lot of time quietly in nature and respectfully behaving, towards the earth, and their intentions and emotions were of, reverence and appreciation and gratitude for this life and, the journey that we're on. And at some point, something just opened, and I started seeing past lives on people's faces, and I started seeing incredible colors and energy flowing, just exactly like the Aurora Borealis. And I was talking earlier about to Prop about the Aurora Borealis, and you can see those waves of energy spinning and folding, and it's all around us. We're in this illusion, but it's really all energy. And when murmurating birds, they do their thing, they're riding those waves of pure joy, the energy of the universe, of pure bliss. And schooling fish, they do the same thing. The PhDs can't explain how these animals do these things, but the mystics can. And I'm kind of a mystic now, but yeah, they're looking at those blissful waves and riding them. And that is the motivation, is just to be in that dimension of pure love. That's what we come from. That's what the universe is. And in these bodies, we're just pretending that it's a hellish place, but it really isn't. It's just a game we play. So I could go on and on. Is that did you guys want to ask some questions about these things, or any questions about what's going on since then, or anything I brought up? So, do I know the Council of 12? If so, who are they? I have lots of experiences now, because there's this, when you say yes to the universe and you start cooperating, and all you have is gratitude and appreciation, and you sit quietly, and you connect back with the earth, you connect back to source energy. It's all about light. You eat food full of light, you drink structured water. There's a whole bunch of things you can do. Walk barefoot on the earth, and get back to the natural state that we human beings would be without our modernized world. And you start having all kinds of experiences. And one of them was, I would find myself, and David Oakford talks about this, and a couple of other people, about being before this board. And at night, okay, Troop, that's good. Sometimes I dream, dreams/experiences. So there are experiences that are happening in other dimensions, other realms, and we chalk them up to dreams, but they're actually quite divine things that are happening to us in our travels. And one of them is, I would find myself either at a table being evaluated, or I'd be up at this on a podium, and there would be people. And if you say there was 12, I would believe you. And they're sitting in chairs, they're sitting out in front of me, and I'm explaining something. Bill isn't explaining anything, but the higher Bill, the higher conscious being that knows what's really going on, is explaining something about this life or something. And I can see them, and they're usually very animated, big smiles, happy, sometimes really super happy. And sometimes they are kind of neutral, kind of looking at me like, okay, yeah, all right, sure. Nothing negative. But I remember one time I was at this table, and I was doing some song and dance thing, and I knew it was a song and dance thing, and they knew it was a song and dance thing. It's, something a teenager would do and get out of trouble or something. And I remember thinking, I need to knock this off. I need to come clean with them and get on their page. And it was kind of a growing up moment. And I remember David Oakford, he has an NDE, and he talked about being in front of this panel and saying the wrong things, throwing a fit. And he said he was discarded, literally thrown out of the dimension or out of the, this council's place or whatever. He found himself outside on a park bench, and he felt like he was discarded, and they were not going to deal with his fit. And, that's a real thing. We're here to learn, and, it's not all rosy. Okay. Has anything changed from what you remember since you've been back, like the Mandela effect? Life been better or worse since this happened? Crunchy B. The Mandela effect, that's an interesting thing with that Mandela effect. But I can't say. I'll think about it. I'll get back to you. But as far as, Crunchy B asked something about, is it better or worse? Yeah, thank you. So my life was, it continued the same after, but I noticed after a couple of years, I was less reactive, and I was more interested in my fellow firefighters. I was interested in their welfare more than my needs. And that was a gradual thing, and I chalked it up to age. But my family even said, you're really changing. And, this is This is a Kundalini thing. I took the invitation, and this will start the Kundalini energy waking up in the spine. And I had all the spine shaking things, and a lot of the symptoms of energy, divine energy coming through the human form and opening it up to receive more information. And that's been going on for years, and that's normal. And something that was happening was I could feel other people's feelings from things that I was doing. And it became more important to me as the years clicked away to make those reactions that they were experiencing. I wanted those to be positive. It was really important that they be positive, even if they were wrong and they'd done something to harm me or something like that. That was really interesting changes that were happening in that regard. So, yeah, life got way better after 38 years old. And when somebody would, lash out at me for no other reason except that they were, they had some kind of something lacking in them, I understood where it was coming from, that it was not me. It wasn't personal. And I didn't have to react to it. And I didn't have to think about it. And I didn't have to do any of those things. It didn't, Bill wasn't so important as the years went by. Was the Akashic Records inside a Roman design building? No, what I saw, I was flying through the star-filled realm, and all I saw was, it was like in the old days, we had this thing called a microfiche. You go to the library and you'd put this thing in, and then you'd spin it. And if you could spin it really fast, and the pages would just fly by, and like shooting through a PDF. That's what I saw, and it was kind of overwhelming. It's like, oh my goodness, there's no end to this information. But John Davis talks about going to this astral city, and where all this information, all these libraries and planetariums, and he has an amazing, one of my favorite NDEs. He's obviously for real. He's not trying to get attention. He doesn't sell anything. He just tells his story over and over, like like a bunch of us do, and we understand, how important it is, how this is divine work, and we're asked to do it, and we're raising to the challenge. So yeah, he talks about that. And Edgar Cayce, when he would leave his body, this is a good tie-in, but when he would leave his body to give a reading, he would move to the Akashic Records, but he would find himself a dot of light outside his body, and he found himself in a lonely, dismal, scary, dark place just outside his body. And that's exactly what I remember coming back. And then he would move over to this light, and there was a stairway there, and he would go up the stairway, follow this light, and he would pass these little hooded elves and gnomes on the stairway. And they were going back and forth between all these different levels, this 8 levels. And they had dark robes at the bottom, and they had light robes at the top. And he would go into the Akashic Records and then return with some information for somebody who was given a reading to. So that was confirmation. Everything Edgar Cayce says, confirmation for me of, how amazing the universe really is, and how we're just in this little box in the corner of a garage somewhere having this experience. But really, when we leave our bodies, we open up into this amazing mall, with theaters and restaurants and sports events and libraries and amusement parks, and it goes on forever. And that's really is, we just have to earn our entrance into the rest of them all. Do you know what the purpose is of those little hooded beings and why they're always giggling? Well, I think they are, I think it's cute, by the way. Those beings are, they're like angels or guides or helpers. They have a sort of a technical responsibility for following us, and people call them, people get into this thing with the alien abduction, that but they're actually following us and upgrading us, and we get pulled in all the time, all of us. And as you progress in your many lives and your energy is getting up there, then you start seeing them, and you start remembering them. Mostly we don't in this life, and that means you are progressing. You're, the people that talk about alien abductions or seeing these beings, they're getting ready to leave their Earth school. They're getting ready to graduate. And so if you think about them and you think about people being afraid, just if you've ever had a puppy and you had to take the puppy to the vet, and you bring the puppy in and the lights are strong and they have to set him on a steel table, and there's people looking at him and they're prodding him and stuff. And the puppy's like, get me out of here. Who are these guys? And they're so afraid, and you're like going, oh, don't be afraid. They're here to help you. And, that's what we are. We are the puppy, and those that are assisting us in our journey are keeping us healthy and, making sure we hit our marks, hit the challenges that we signed up for, maybe changing our minds on, career paths or love interests or something like that. They just keep the movie going and keep the actors healthy. And I'm going to say, I'll get that Buzzicino. I'll get that question in a second. But so if you're interested in that, my NDE and this whole thing with these hooded little giggling guys, watch The Wizard of Oz. Dorothy's in this drab black and white place with kind of a crappy life, and then she goes up this vortex, this spinning vortex, and she's in this house, and then window breaks off and hits her in the head, and she's knocked out. And if you notice, she peels away from her body. This, lighter version of her peels away from her body and moves around the house, and the house lands over the rainbow. This spinning, swirling energy. I see it all the time. It's all colors. So, and she opens the door, and it's in living, it's all these colors and these giant flowers, incredible colors and life, and a huge upgrade from where she was in Kansas. And she steps outside, and there's these little giggling munchkins, and they approach her in groups of 3, little giggling munchkin people. And eventually this bigger, higher being shows up in an orb, Glenda. She shows up as this colorful orb. That's exactly what I saw when I was in that heavenly realm. I saw these orbs of colors and light. And she talks to Dorothy and kind of humors her and gets her set up for her journey home, and gets her on the yellow brick road. And throughout the time, Glenda keeps an eye on her. Glenda is this higher self of Dorothy, and follows her through her her journey. And her journey, she meets a scarecrow wants a brain, and a tin man wants a heart, and a lion wants courage. And what I get from that is that we have to make the decision to use our brain to focus on the higher energies, the higher frequencies where we come from. Our right brain is connected directly to home, and our left brain is connected to here. So to use our brain to control our mind and to live our lives by the compassion of the heart, by the intelligence of the heart in all circumstances, and to proceed without fear, with courage, then we get to go home. And there's no place like home. So yeah, lots of movies, and when you're ready to see it, it's there, it's everywhere. The Matrix, one movie after another. It's Star Trek. They're all telling us who we really are. It's not believable. It's ridiculous. It's impossible. But that's my story as far as our worldly journey. So there was another thing there, and it said something about there was another question. Anyone pulled out of their body to save their lives. I had this young girl. She was a high schooler, and she said I was sitting on my bed texting, and all of a sudden I felt like I was being vacuumed right out. This whole thing right here. This is pineal gland. This is the seat of the soul. But she said I felt like I was vacuumed right out of my face, and all of a sudden I was on the ceiling looking at myself down below, and I couldn't get back down. And she was very upset, and eventually she went back into her body slowly, and she told me, "What do you think?" And I said, "Well, you're waking up, and that's what all of these experiences are. They're invitations. It's up to us to recognize it and to take the invitation and to look further, with an open heart and without fear. And then the universe will open, and all the questions will be answered." But she didn't want anything to do with that. She was like, "I don't have time for this crap. I've got a life. I'm popular." And I'm like, "Well, you'll be contacted again." And that's what happens. Like I said, we're kind of the player, and we're the experiencee, and we're the avatar, and then the experiencer is our higher self, who wants to have the experience that we're being directed to have. And some time may go by, but there'll be another opportunity for you to get back on track of where you're supposed to go. And that another movie, The Adjustment Bureau, is a really good example of that. And you can see that, like, the little hooded guys, they wear helmets in that movie, but they're all in dark, and they're changing the minds of the people around the main character, which is Matt Damon, I think. And it's a wonderful story. The actors are really cool in it. And I'm not a movie person, but celebrities, I don't really, that's not my thing. But all of our answers are right there. They're coming through our mainstream. It's a small percentage. There's a lot of ugliness, but the real truth is out there. Like the X-Files says, the truth is out there. You just need to know what you're looking at. Okay, I was pulled backwards out of my body into a white void with a circle of vision where I watched my body from. So yeah, that's what we are. We are these, on the other side, we have thousands of senses. and you'll see these things. There's lots of references to octopus and um, squids and things like that, but it's not saying that that's what we look like, but we are this center being that can look like anything with these senses that go out in every direction, and we're like a ball. Going back to the orbs I saw, and Linda and all that, we are like this ball of awareness, this thought form, and with these unlimited senses, we can see in all directions, we can feel things. Sometimes when I have a experience or a dream or something, and I find myself at these dinner parties. This is a really amazing thing. Everyone's dressed up and everyone's really happy to see you, and you'll see family members there, and they're young, and they'll come forward and they'll hug you, and you'll feel hundreds of senses. You'll feel the women, they feel their hair on your cheek, and you'll smell the perfume, and you can feel their energy underneath their fabric of their clothes. We don't lose anything when we leave here. We get this tremendous upgrade in our ability to have emotional exchange with others. What do you think? UFOs, aliens are good, bad? Yeah, the only bad is here. The only things that are scary is here. The universe is, these are emotions of sweetness and kindness and playfulness and joyous behavior. Everything is is absolutely joyous to see everything else. This is what I'm, if you think of Burning Man, with all these different costumes and appearances and, the props that they make and stuff. This is what I see in my experiences. It's all amazing, and it has that incredible euphoric feel to it all the time. That is the dimension of pure love. That's where we come from. And the only bad is what happens here. And the way out of here is we stop reacting to the bad and realize who we are. And I know that's really difficult to say, but if you get closer to the earth and closer to the sun and all those things that matter, really matter, then you can feel it again. And so with the aliens and UFOs, I think aliens, we are these multidimensional beings, and we travel at night, and we move into other dimensions, and it is an infinite number of experiences out there. Life, we think life is physical life, but it's not. It's just a machine that we inhabit for a while. Real life is the life force of the universe, and we are these intelligent beings of light, and we are at play in a sea of pure love. And that's really what it comes down to. I've had a very close experience with a bright orb in the sky. It felt good. I wanted to go in and with it. Yeah, that's absolutely fits. We all want to go home. Thank you for your time and service. My ending words. Okay, I started off with this thing about my NDE and this thing with DMT and the pineal gland, and kind of tied it together with sitting quietly and having, positive thoughts and lifting your energy. And, there's nothing special about me or any other NDEer. We just had an experience, and some of us recognized it and took the bait, took the invite and went and looked further. And you figure out there we have a seat of the soul in our third eye, and once it becomes activated, we can access these other realms, these other dimensions, these other universe of pure love. And everybody can do it. They can do it right now. Just sit quietly and let go. And the more you do it, it's like going to the gym. The more you do it, the further you'll go. And that's the answer. That's what the other side wants us to realize. They want us to learn that we are it. We just have to reconnect with it. Okay, thank you very much, you guys. It's been an honor to be on Propagate the Light. And everybody take care. Everything's always fine.